Hey everyone, welcome to Josh and Ferd versus the world. A little bit of a name change there.
Yes, I think that it's a worthy change. I think our previous host Evan Freiberger is unable to continue with the podcast like he was.
Yeah, due to Evan's current job working on the weather, he's just too preoccupied, especially with it being severe weather season. So, a little bit of change to the podcast with Bedford being the secondary host. We thought the name change to Josh and Ferd versus the world was more appropriate than not.
That's not to say that E. Fry won't return in the future, but we'll
By
see.
E Fry, he does mean Evan Freiberger. It's just, that's our.
Who else is E. Fry? Who else could be E. Fry in
Well,
this
like,
context?
it could be a little confusing,
Yeah. To the non-channel veterans who
I mean,
haven't seen
like,
E-Fry yet.
it's not much of a stretch to go from Bedford to Ferd, but
Yeah.
like from Evan to E Fry, a little bit more.
I don't know. I think it's a good nickname. I think it's
I mean, it is a good nickname.
self-evident.
I never said it was a bad nickname.
Okay. All right. That's
Yeah.
fair. But anyways,
So today got a good bit of stories, so we want to start out a little bit domestically. I know a lot of stuff's been happening with Tesla, especially with, did you know apparently some of the stuff that Elon Musk is doing is controversial?
Elon Musk, a controversial figure. I've never considered it that way, Josh.
Well, so apparently people are protesting, and like this gentleman right here in this first video, I just think it's absolutely nuts. Like this man decides to, well, I mean, I'll let the video speak for itself. I know you can see the video. Like this man's carving a freaking swastika in this man's Tesla. And keep in mind, never met the guy, doesn't know him, never even seen his car before, just sees it's a man driving a Tesla and just decides I'm gonna carve a swastika in the door.
Well, we'll see. Let's watch the video,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we'll see if this could be considered protesting.
All right, well, let's watch. Let's see. Okay, so here we go. He's getting out of his car, being real sneaky. Oh, and ooh, yeah, he's dragging a key. So now, keep in mind, focus. That is a key for sure. Although he drew that pretty
Give
quickly.
you some free service.
Free service. How about you pay for the repairs?
Okay, what could possibly? Well, he said it was a free service. This man just keyed a swastika in his Tesla.
I think he was trying to make an offer, like, "Oh, I'll give you this type of service." But this is in fact what we're to understand. This is in fact the guy.
Here, let's full screen it so we really appreciate the excuses.
Write a check.
Listen,
You just bought a Tesla.
I can wipe it off
No,
with a towel.
no,
It's not
no.
a key.
It is a
It was
hate crime,
it was
sir.
A crayon.
It is a hate crime.
Listen,
Did you write a swastika on there?
I'm sorry you're upset.
Did you write a
It didn't even-
swastika?
It didn't even work, apparently.
you-
It
Notice how
doesn't
he's
work
not
with
even
a
saying,
crayon.
I'm
swastika on the-
sorry
it's
I
a-
damaged your car. He's saying, I'm sorry you're upset. Is that it?
That sounds like typical behavior from the caliber of person this gentleman seems to
That
be.
just seems like someone that's not ever really been held accountable.
Yeah. We'll see. Let's see what else he has
I'm
to say.
sorry you're upset after I
He may
keyed
make
your
up
car.
for it. He may make up.
Who
for it.
says that? I'm sorry you're
I know.
upset.
Listen,
drew a
let's just. I know
swastika in
Joshua,
you.
but let's give him a chance. Let's give
The
him a
key,
chance.
sir. We see it on the
It's
video.
not a key.
Did you? Is it a
I was
swastika?
probably putting my keys in
Is
my
it a
pocket.
swastika?
Have you looked at your
Is
car?
it a
Is there a key
yes.
mark?
Is it
It's
a
not-
swastika?
that's
It's at the
impossible.
police right now. It's being fingerprinted
What do you mean it's being fingerprinted?
because they're trying to track you down. Thankfully, Facebook tracked you down.
Yeah.
So you're
Okay, pause on that because I do love that the internet was better at figuring out who this guy was than the police.
Yeah. Well, it's clearly. Well, it's. I think their main priority is the more extreme forms of vandalism, which we will touch on later. But yeah, this guy seems to be.
Well,
all
I
teed
get
up
that,
for
there are
internet.
definitely like, I know we'll touch on the fire bombings a little bit later. A little spoiler there, but not too much. But, that is straight vandalism. This is vandalism with an added hate crime. Because not only have you vandalized their property, but you've drawn a symbol associated with hate that is now permanently engraved in that door.
That's true. But the consideration you have to make is usually that symbolism used as a hate crime is done with hate towards, like it's done with intention in support of the ideals that the swastika resembles. But this seems to be like a flipping of the tables,
You think he's trying to label him a Nazi?
I believe that's what he's going for. Now,
right.
whether or not functionally that's what's happening.
Now let me put that in the in the terms of if we were to trade a swastika for the N-word and it was just a random black person, that would be a hate crime. So, like, if you're labeling someone by destroying their property and putting an offensive symbol or word and carving it into the paint of their vehicle, I think you kind of lost the message a little bit.
It does depend on the context, because if they were to take it to court, it's like this guy does not appear.
I mean, he's getting his 15
in almost
minutes of
any
fame,
way,
though.
shape, or form. Let me finish. He does not appear in any way, shape, or form to be your typical Nazi enthusiast or white power.
What are you talking about? Look at this man. Look, if you just put a stash right there, that's Adolf Hitler.
How do you know his sexual orientation? Are you assuming this man's preferences? Maybe you'd know a little more if we finished hearing what he had to say.
Let's see. We're at 50 or 40 something seconds there, but I mean, just look at how he does this. Does that look like a very? Look at his posture.
Are you insinuating that
I don't see this man like
being in love with a woman and starting a family?
Is there a key mark?
Yes.
is
Is it a
It's not-
swastika?
that's
It's at the
impossible.
police right now. It's being fingerprinted.
What do you mean it's being fingerprinted?
Because they're trying to track you down. Thankfully, Facebook tracked you down. So your business, your freaking livelihood, everything now,
Listen.
because you chose to write so to tell Facebook that you're sorry for writing a swastika on a Tesla.
Listen, I said I'm sorry.
For what?
And I
For what?
apologize.
For what?
I have nothing against
For
your
what?
car, and I have nothing against you.
So why
Okay?
would you write a swastika on a Tesla?
Obviously, I have something against Elon Musk, but that's not the
So
way
Elon
to
Musk
show my.
owns that car because
No,
it was
he
bought
owns
and
the
paid
company.
for. It was bought and paid for a long time
That's
ago.
why it's misguided, and obviously, I did not intend to do this.
All right.
Misguided, he says.
Yeah, apparently that was misguided, guys.
Although, listen, what he said was probably what you should say if you do something like that. Like, oh, well, that was a misguided thing on my part. I think we have a classic case of not sorry because he did it, but instead sorry because he got caught doing it.
Yeah, like and I think the number one, and I remember I paused it during the video to say that he didn't say, "I'm sorry I destroyed your car." He said, "I'm sorry you're upset about it."
Yeah. It's a very, what's the word?
That just
he's
tells me-
projecting responsibility from
he's
himself.
saying, "I'm not sorry I keyed your car. I'm sorry you caught me." That's literally what in my mind, that's what he's saying. I'm not sorry I keyed your car. I'm sorry you're upset because you caught me keying your car on video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'd be curious to know what the follow up on that was, if the police have got him yet. Because I mean, as we said earlier, that is most certainly at minimum criminal vandalism. Like,
Well,
that's,
I mean, it's a hate crime and criminal vandalism at minimum. But, you do also, like, we're talking, when we talk about this one, which is man charged in Tesla firebomb attack, denies trying to run from feds. Like, I don't know why he would deny that. I mean, if you firebomb someone, I would kind of expect you to run, especially if you didn't want to get caught, But, I mean, this is kind of like the escalation of it. So you have some people that would see, someone drawing a swastika into someone's car and be like, oh, okay, I see he got caught. I see he's facing consequences. At the very least, he's going to be held accountable to repair that man's Tesla. When he has it on video, and now he has the man's name and address, and apparently he said he has a business too. Like, the police are fingerprinting him. So he did also say the police are fingerprinting him because they were looking for him. He just found him first. So now I assume he's probably going to be in conjunction with the police. Like, look, I found the guy. I have him on video admitting to it. Like, I have a confession on video. And it'd probably be a pretty simple process of him getting charged with it. Probably a misdemeanor. I mean, I don't think I don't think they'd charge him with felony assault on this. I mean, I could see it as probably he'll get charged with 1 or 2 misdemeanors, probably face a fine, and then I see the other guy. The other thing would be it would be a civil matter, so it would get handled in civil court whether or not he repairs his Tesla or not.
Yeah, well, and you gotta, I mean, with the absolute mountain of evidence that is against him, I mean, they've got the Sentry Mode footage from the Tesla. They've got this dude on camera admitting to what all he would know is a stranger. It shows how smart this guy really is. He literally admits to the crime, and yeah, all that is more or less.
To be fair, you know, you do have the right to remain silent while talking to the police and also while talking to other people. But when you're literally talking to the owner of a guy's car who you vandalized the day before, you kind of give up a certain bit of that.
Yeah. Well, and they'll probably, and with that mountain of evidence, they'll probably offer him, like on the criminal side, they'll offer him a plea deal of some kind.
Because let's just be realistic about this. If there weren't cameras and he was still able to figure out who carved a swastika in his car, I would expect that man got his ass beat back in the day. For keying a car and getting caught with it. Like, now that being said, before cameras
back in the day didn't have a 24/7 ability to take footage.
Yeah, I'm saying you would literally have to catch him in the act. But I'm saying if you caught that man in the act of keying your car back in the day, he probably would have got an ass beaten instead of an ass chewing and getting sued.
Maybe today, depending on whose car it was.
Well, he probably might. Back in the day, I'm saying he'd fix the car and get his ass beat. Nowadays, he'll just face charges and have to fix the car.
Well, and then get beat up in jail, probably.
Nah, because he didn't do any, like, I think mostly in jail, they beat up the people that have stuff to do with kids.
Well.
Like, if you killed a kid or you are, you know, if you molested or whatever it was with a child, then yeah, you usually end up dead or very not
well. I
happy
think
in prison.
if you consider the
I don't
fact
think they're
that,
gonna be like protecting. I don't think they're gonna be like trying to protect Donald Trump or Elon Musk's image for a guy who carved a swastika in a car. If anything, in prison, there's a gang of white people that would probably support him carving a swastika in the car. Now that being said, based off his voice and demeanor, I don't think he'd fit in with the white supremacists. But you never know. Maybe if he shaved his head, he'd look just like one of them.
Well, I think to your point earlier, if his sexual orientation happens to be what at the very least you've assumed it to be, I think that what would happen to him in jail would be none of what we've described so far, and I don't think it would be a good idea to describe
Honestly,
it.
I just really wanted to say Adolf Hitler. I don't know if he's actually gay or not, but I just thought that was a really fun thing because he carved a swastika in his car, and I was like, oh, look, it's Adolf Hitler.
Well, point being, if he is in fact, as you would say, Adolf Hitler,
I have nothing against gay people, by the way. I just want to make that known.
He would most certainly.
I do have a few things against Adolf Hitler, though. Also want to make that known.
Right, but he would have a hard time in jail for many reasons other than keying a car. I'll just say that.
Well, let's look at a man who does have many reasons to. So, you know, we can go first. We'll play the video of this. So here we go. Here.
This was a targeted attack against a Tesla facility.
Yet another Tesla dealership vandalized, this time in Las Vegas. Authorities arriving in the early morning hours Tuesday to find multiple cars set on fire.
We believe the suspect approached the business wearing all black clothing, and he used what appear to be Molotov cocktails and a firearm to conduct his attack.
Now, this incident follows other cases in recent days in places like Kansas City, Missouri, as well as Southern California and the Chicago area where Tesla dealers were vandalized. Tesla founder Elon Musk took to Twitter to call this terrorism. Now, officials have not yet formally ruled this an act of terrorism, but the FBI says its Joint Terrorism Task Force is conducting a robust investigation in order to try to find the perpetrator and the motive.
Violent acts like this are unacceptable. We will come after you, we will find you, and prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law.
Immediately following the announcement of your nomination.
And here's kind of my take on that, which is, if you are to the point where you think that to show your political activism, you need to take a Molotov cocktail and a gun to a Tesla dealership and just cause mayhem, like, I think you lost the message, because what point are you really making other than I like to blow shit up and shoot shit?
Well, I mean, it's a political demonstration, obviously, and you know, as anyone could know, it's political demonstrations can vary in their level of violence and destruction. Now, whether or not it constitutes terrorism, see, I think it's interesting that they are investigating it as such, at least. You know, like they've got the Joint Terrorism Task Force on it. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see what they say, but I'm of the opinion that it is somewhat terroristic in nature. Like the destruction of property in a public setting is kind of the bare minimum for what would constitute domestic terrorism. So,
yeah,
I think it could be considered that. But what do you think, Joshua?
When you're terrorism, by its definition, is acts to instill fear to basically get your point across, right? Or to send a message. So in this regard, this actually 100% fits the bill of terrorism. He's trying to instill fear with Elon Musk and the supporters of Musk that if you drive a Tesla or if you're not safe, and that you need to chill and stop doing what you're doing or you'll continue to not be safe. And that is literally the definition of terrorism, which is using fear to get your point across.
Yeah.
And so where I understand that it's not to the degree of 9/11 or to, the stadium bombings in France a long time ago or to some, mass casualty event where hundreds of people or the Las Vegas shooting, right? All those things I would define as large terrorist style attacks, right? It is a politically motivated attack. It's meant to instill fear. It's meant to attack public safety, and there's no positive from this, if you were, so like, let's take Martin Luther King, for example, a much bigger figure, right? But he had a message, and his whole message was to get your point across. Nonviolence is the solution. If the people that we're fighting with want to be violent, we can make them look bad by just being peaceful. And it was the most effective form of protest because you were still protesting, but because your message was peaceful and because no one was being hurt as a result of your protests, but as a result of the police interfering, that it made your message stronger. Now, when you're hurting the public and you're hurting public safety and you're hurting property, all you're doing is diminishing your message because no one, most people that read this story, whether you're on the left or right, I'd like to think that you take a step back and you look at this man and be like, yeah, he's literally at the point of being a terrorist. For what gain? Like, what real gain is there from this firebombing? Like, he's charged with 2 felonies. Let's see how much time he's facing with those 2 felonies. I mean, all he's done is basically ruined his own life. That's all he's accomplished.
Well, if you think about it, and I think this goes to the argument of it being terrorism, I think what stood to be accomplished from this has been accomplished, which is to instill fear. And now whether or not he's trying to direct that fear towards Elon, I doubt that it would get that far. In effect, what he's doing is really just threatening the general populace.
And he's getting 20 years in prison for it. So this, how old is he? Does it say his age here? So this is Cooper Frederick.
Well, he looks like a young guy. There's no way he's older than
24 years old. So at 44 years old, because of this incident, so by the time he's going through his midlife crisis, he'll be getting out of prison. Damn, he was 24. He's a kid.
Yeah, dude. See, well, and it's easy for us because we're on the upper end of our 20s. But, like, I can still... I'm not too far enough removed from my early 20s to understand kind of how this guy could get in this state of mind. Like, he's only just gained the capability to truly engage with the world.
Is your 15 minutes of fame worth 20 years in prison, though?
Well, no, I mean, a wise man would say certainly not, but this is not, in fact, a wise man. This is a 24-year-old young man who is very clearly unwise.
And he brought a gun and Molotov cocktails.
But listen, I mean, and if you do look at it through the lens of it being a terror attack, I mean, not only does it line up with all the aspects of what happened, but the effect garnered, like what was stood to gain from him doing this, has been achieved, and that is people are scared. And
you know what, reading this, the people that were probably the most scared? The fucking cleaning staff that was still in the building when he firebombed it.
Well, did he firebomb the building or just the
Well,
car?
he said he threw it at the building, so an incendiary ice was ignited and thrown at the Tesla building, Molotov cocktail, landing between two vehicles. Loveland police
So
said.
he threw it like more so, they mean more so in the direction of the
Several people, let me highlight the correct thing here. Several people inside who were cleaning the building were put at risk, however. So the people, the freaking janitors were the ones that got terrified. Yeah, I don't think Elon Musk had anything to do with this Las Vegas test. Like, if you're trying to terrify Elon Musk, I don't think you're doing a good job. If you're trying to terrify his, not even his employees, because Elon Musk only owns 12% of Tesla. So if you want to terrorize Tesla's employees, you're doing a great job at that, but you're not making any impact on Elon Musk for real.
Yeah.
You're impacting 90% of the people you're impacting when you do that is the Tesla stock shareholders. You could say that some of those are friends of Elon Musk, but I have a feeling that most of those people are just friends with making money. And Tesla has been a stock that's steadily risen, so they all like to make money. So it's just, it's a publicly traded company. Anyone can go buy shares.
Yeah.
I could be a stakeholder in Tesla.
Well, if you're a 24-year-old in this state of mind, I'm sure that the nuance of business ownership is not probably not at top of mind.
You think he just thinks stonks? You think he's got the stonks mentality?
More or less.
Stonks.
Stonks.
Yeah, he does look like a man that would use that meme.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably a meme. He's probably very good with memes.
He also looks like he's gonna have a fun time in prison. If we were talking about a don't drop the soap kind of guy, he doesn't look like the biggest dude.
Yeah, a little 24-year-old young man going into big boy federal prison, especially if they do inevitably, like, officially consider this an act of domestic terrorism. He's not going to the comfortable part of prison. No, he'll be in. He'll be in with the rough folks, the people who have committed also high-level felonies such as
so it's saying that
domestic terrorism.
All of these cases are a serious threat to public safety. Therefore, there will be no negotiating. We're seeking 20 years in prison.
Yeah, this guy will definitely not get a plea deal, obviously.
It says he still has not yet entered a plea in this case. He's in federal custody without a bond. A hearing in this federal case has not yet been set in Colorado as of Tuesday, so that would be today. It is Tuesday, right?
Yes, it is Tuesday.
Yes, it is. I was about to literally have to pull up the calendar. Yeah, that's how you know it's been a long week already. I was thinking it might be Wednesday.
On Tuesday, it's already been a long week.
Bless I know it's gonna be a hump day tomorrow. If there's ever been one, getting over the hump's gonna feel so good. So, still in the process of gathering information and facts about the allegations, and will rely on the professionalism of U.S. Attorney District Mr. Frederick is fairly, despite the recent inflammatory press statements from Washington D.C. We intend to litigate the case in court, like any other federal criminal matter, not in the media. And, that kind of goes with the innocent until proven guilty, not the other way around. He is not guilty until proven innocent. He is innocent until technically proven guilty. Now, that being said, the fact that they do have him and he is being held on no bond, that does not look good for the innocent until proven guilty. But
now, how quickly did they catch him? Does it say when the acts were committed and when he was apprehended?
It said that Frederick was arrested on March 13th and was arrested on March 13th, charged with multiple felonies. So I think it took them 6 days. Yeah. So a Tesla dealership shown in Loveland, Colorado, police say incident was involved thrown into a dealership lot on March 7th. So on March 7th, he bombed it. The 13th, they arrested him, and now the 28th is when they basically decided they were going to charge him with 20 years.
So it sounds like, and especially since they're not going to even attempt to offer a plea deal, it sounds like their evidence is pretty good. Sounds like they probably
also
got
miss
him.
This is that several people who inside were cleaning the building were put at risk. However, responding officer quickly extinguished the fire, preventing any further harm or damage.
Well, the big issue with that was like the electric car fires that obviously resulted from
toxicity.
The electric cars getting lit on fire.
Incredibly toxic when they burn.
Yeah. Well, and they're just like, unless you have the exact Well, and maybe they do have the exact tools to put out an electric fire at the Tesla dealership. I wouldn't say that.
Well, with an electric fire, all you need is to starve it of oxygen and to remove the action. So you need to, one, like disconnect any power cables, which in a Tesla, I would imagine.
In a Tesla that's actively on fire from another source of fire.
So then I would assume, like in the Navy for like a fuel fire, which I don't even know, because like for electrical fires, I was always taught to use CO2 because it's non-corrosive.
It doesn't work for battery fires.
So, but with this, I mean, it's already a total loss vehicle anyways. You probably use like a blanket, like a chemical agent that blankets the entire vehicle, like AFFF, which, fun fact, is facing a lawsuit right now because it kills you. But it's really good at smothering fires.
Your future class action
exploits. The future of many health issues I'll probably look forward to thanks to the year I spent rolling around in it.
Goodness gracious.
But, you know, there's other chemicals too, but, you know, you basically, at that point, you're pretty much relegated, as far as I know, to using either chemicals or a ton of water.
Yeah.
And then water can cause further shorts, which, you know.
That's true.
So it's one of those things where you're kind of in a rock. But either way, this responding officer, somehow, it doesn't say how he was able to extinguish the fire. It also said that it was a responding officer, not even the fire department. So good on that officer getting to be a firefighter for the day. He probably felt like 10 times cooler for that 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure you can imagine. I mean, I'm sure they had the local fire department respond. And I think that's probably becoming a more common tool in firefighters' arsenals is the tools that you have to use to put out like an EV fire like that. So,
yeah, with
I
EVs
imagine they're
becoming
pretty
more
good
popular, you know, I wouldn't know on the exact training on that, but I'm sure they have some training nowadays if like there's a vehicle crash, especially in places like California where EVs are incredibly incentivized. You know, one of the ways they do that is when I actually used to sell cars in California, and this is back in 2019, 2020. For any EV, at the time there was a $7,500 federal tax credit that you got, and then California matched that, so you get a $15,000 combined tax credit for buying an EV, which basically halves the price of most EVs. Or well, most EVs are typically around starting at around $30,000 to $40,000, so it could have to about, you know, quarter the price depending on what package or what trim level. But EVs are expensive, man.
Yes, they are.
And, you know, so that was one of the ways that they'll incentivize this. So in a state like California, I would say that this is going to be much more relevant versus like in Alabama. I see plenty of Teslas, but not nearly as many as I ever saw living in California. So, you know, I guess it's just going to be more of a location-based thing. I know Tesla, just being a large American car maker, is pretty popular around the country, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, well, you start to see them more and more as the days goes on. I mean, and other companies, EVs as well. So it's you know, probably not as much. Well, I don't know, probably not enough to like seriously impact our environmental harm, but
well, I would say that the definite environmental harm from this comes from anything like when a fire burns like that. All that nasty residual, first of all, smoke gets pumped into the atmosphere, so anyone around breathing it gets toxic smoke inhalation. And then also something that people don't think about is, I mean, it's just it's gonna leave a stain, and if you look, it's cloudy there. All it takes is one good rain, and it washes that into the gutter and poisons basically the entire surrounding. So it's, you know, there's the environmental impact of burning an EV, and then there's just you shouldn't just go to a dealership with a firebomb or with a bunch of Molotov cocktails and a gun and just start wrecking mayhem, because eventually your message probably going to get lost and you're going to spend 20 years in prison.
At least.
I don't know, man. That's brutal. They're seeking 20 years. Like I said, getting out at 44 years old, going in at 24 and getting out at 44. Donald Trump will have already been out of the White House for at least 16 years by the time he gets out of prison. So this will be 16 years irrelevant by the time he finally gets to see freedom and gets the chance to make another statement again.
Well, it just goes to show the fickle and temporary nature of you know, all these political occurrences and all the way that everyone feels about it. It's like, you know, there's
you know what I
so
would call
much
that?
more future in front of what's happening now. It's like to get that tied up, let me put it this way, to get tied up enough into our current politics to affect your own life for years to come is a pretty moot effort.
You know what I would call that? Very short-sighted activism.
Yeah.
Yeah, because not only does your message not have much of an impact when you made it, but in the 20 years when you finally get out and get a chance to see it, it's going to be completely irrelevant.
Yeah, well, and real political change often takes much more time than any one presidential term.
And typically, unless there's a successful coup, it's not done through violence. Yeah. And if it is done through violence, typically the outcome is less than favorable. Bolshevik Revolution. Anyone?
Well, let's not get too deep into the histories of revolutions.
Mao Zedong.
French Revolution.
Hey, that one had some positive outcomes, honestly.
Yeah, a lot of nobles got their heads cut off.
Yeah, it's pretty lit. I mean, the guillotine's a pretty cool device, if you ask me.
Oh, yeah, I guess yeah.
I actually watched a whole thing. I think it was in like the 1800s that France did their last beheading.
Took him to the 18. Well, granted, there was a lot of other not good things going on.
Dude, I don't know what you're talking about. America still has the firing squad. We had a dude just request it. You think I'm joking? I'll pull it up, man.
I mean, can you request a firing squad?
Like, yeah, 100%.
And they have to do it for you? I mean, I know you get like a last meal, but like, I don't want you to shoot me 7 times at the same time, or I don't know how many.
There you go. On March 7th. So there's you go. On March 7th, America executed a man via firing squad all of 24 days ago. Yeah. Not even a month ago.
Do you think...
we're talking shit about the French using a guillotine 100 years ago?
Well... They probably did the firing squad then too, frankly. That's probably what they replaced the guillotine with.
And, it was only the first time in 15 years. So that means that in 2010, someone was put to death via firing squad.
Interesting. I wonder if they actually have people shoot people for the firing squad, or if they like set up a bunch of guns to be fired remotely.
So he was put to death for the murder of his girlfriend's parents. It was the first time in 15 years an execution had been carried out by firing squad. The United Minister Hillary Taylor Sigmund, spiritual advisor since 2021, said that multifaceted months-long efforts to save Sigmund's life and provide emotional and spiritual support for his legal team in the aftermath of his execution has a whirlwind, said Taylor, the director of South Carolina's Alternative to Death Penalty. Now... why do you think he requested death by firing squad? Do you think he was just trying to fuck with the system? Like, you won't do it? I mean, obviously they did it.
Well, clearly they will, and if it only happened 15 years prior, then they're probably still in the the practice of it.
I have a theory.
Yeah, let's hear it.
He wanted to fuck some dudes' lives up. Bro.
Well, that's assuming that they make people do it when they could.
What do you mean? That's how it's done.
No.
They line up 5 guards and give 2 of them real bullets and 3 of them blanks.
That's how they used to do it before.
Well, let's find out. Let's see.
I'm almost certain they set up a jig with multiple rifles aimed at the same spot. I don't think they make other people do it anymore. It's kind of why I said earlier. I figure if I had to guess, I'm almost certain that they set up a rig with guns.
I am pretty sure. You know what?
We're going to learn something today.
We're going to learn today, man.
Learn today.
Death by firing squad. For most prisoners, was a form of execution chosen, a method carrying the death penalty. In Utah, it was banned in 2004. Good for them. Lethal injection, which is so much more humane.
Yeah.
Considering that there's been people that have survived it, that it's been described to be incredibly painful. Like I said, personally, if I was being put to death, I think I actually would prefer being blindfolded and then just shot in the heart, because I know it's going to be like 10 seconds of pain before I'm unconscious.
And more than the heart.
I think they aim at the heart.
Could you? So if you're already requesting to be shot, could you ask that they shoot you in the head instead? Do you get to choose where you get shot?
The 5 executioners, certified police, remained anonymous, stood about 25 feet away and shot from behind a black curtain and through a brick wall cut with a gun port, a special opening of the firearms. Of the 5 guns, 1 was loaded with a blank so that no one would be able to determine who fired the fatal shot. So 4 people had 30, and they were doing it through a brick wall with a black curtain.
Well, so that answers the question of whether or not people do it. And which one are they talking? Is this the recent one they're talking about, or which one is this based on?
This would be the one that happened 15 years prior.
Okay. So 15 years ago, they did it with the people.
Yeah. Remember how it said it hadn't been done since 2010? Well, this would be the one that was in 2010. I mean, we can look published date of the article, which is 2010, June 18th.
So they did use people. I wonder if they went... Well, so now my question would be, why not use a jig? And if I had to answer it, I would say maybe just because it's just cheaper and easier.
Okay, how do you even know that your rifle sight is lined up with the target on his heart if you're firing through a port and a brick wall and a black curtain?
Well, they can see where they're shooting.
So maybe it is in like a rig. No, because it said they're firing from a blind from a black curtain and a brick wall, dude. I don't know how well you can see.
Well, they have a gun. Look, it said they had a gun port. I mean, you have to... How would you know if you're going to shoot them?
The 5 executioners, certified police officers who remained anonymous, stood about 25 feet or 7.6 meters away and shot from behind a black curtain and through a brick wall cut with a gun port. A special opening for firearms. Of the 5 guns, 1 was loaded with a blank so that no one would be able to determine the fatal shot.
But that doesn't say, so is the black, but there's got it, so are the guns phasing through reality to get to the black curtain? No, there's a hole in the black curtain and there's a hole in the brick wall, because how would they know if they're even shooting at them? Think about it. If you just put them in there, and you might as well blindfold them at that rate.
Well,
gosh darn it! And then what's going to happen? Bullets are going everywhere, and you'd have to get lucky to kill them. Then that makes it that's about as sketchy as a lethal injection at that point.
Yeah. No, maybe there was a whole framing.
Maybe you get hit with a bullet. Maybe you don't. We'll see.
I do appreciate... See, I don't know if that's... I feel like they might have just written that wrong, because, like, if they're trying to see, like, who doesn't know who fired the lethal shot, like, first of all, isn't it pretty obvious with a blank after you fired it, because it's got the little serrations from where it uncrimps?
No,
yes,
I'm okay. Yes, but that wouldn't be the biggest indicator. The biggest indicator would be the lack of recoil, because you're not driving any mass. Down the barrel to cause a reaction, and that's what causes the kick of a gun. Honestly, is not the explosion. It's not any part of the gun moving, even if it's a semi-auto. The majority of that kickback is from the mass of the bullet being accelerated in one direction, and the kick comes in the opposite. Basic physics.
So what you're saying is it's pretty obvious to everyone who just shot. AKA, like, the one guy who had the blanks, like, doop, and everyone else is like, doosh.
Everyone, see, I think that is to keep. They're already anonymous, but I think that's just to employ some doubt, because the reality is that the guys who had bullets and fired real bullets from their guns would know that they, in fact, shot a real bullet from the gun. The blank, on the other hand, he would feel little to no recoil and would know that he was the one who did not, in fact, fire a real bullet. But I think it's just the idea of the blank being in there, So we can't say for sure. We can't say for sure who did it, because one of them had a blank. That still almost doesn't
ultimately,
make a
at the end of the day, I think that if you were against being on the firing squad, you would feel just as guilty whether or not you fired a lethal shot or not. You were participating in that man's death. Yeah. I don't think it has the psychological impact. I think it's kind of pointless. I think if you're gonna have men on a firing squad, they all know what they're there to do, and what's the point of trying to cookie cut it? You're all there to kill it, man. Like,
yeah.
He's being put to death for a reason.
Well, that's
whether or not it's a good reason. I mean, it's your job to make sure that it's done. Technically,
well, if you think about it, back when I'm sure firing squads have existed for, by and large part, as long as guns and have been produced in some type of large quantity in mass, we'll say. And that's the thing is, if you're thinking like back then, if you had like a muzzle loading weapon, right, and you didn't put the charge in, especially if it's like a black powder gun that produces a lot of smoke when you fire, you would still have the majority of the effect of firing the gun, and it'd still be loud and percussive.
I think I agree.
So
with you.
it'd be a little bit harder to tell, and also a general knowledge of physics was probably not common amongst people back then as well. So they probably didn't have it in their head. Well, the bullet is what makes the gun recoil. So that, in addition, all the smoke and the flash and pop. You know, it probably was harder to tell. And
but what if they had already shot a blank and they just knew from experience it didn't make the gun kick as much?
Well, then, but that's like, now most people understand, like, it's basic grade school knowledge, action equals reaction, right? And so, I don't know. But I guess point being is it makes a little more sense in the context of the past that the blank cartridge being, or a blank load being in the gun would actually do anything. Like that's, I'm still trying to figure
throughout
that out.
history, I think we've all known that shooting blanks is blank loads is
God. How did I know?
Because it's me.
Well, I won't give you the satisfaction of finishing that point all the way. However, I will
as someone
commend
shooting
you.
blanks would.
You just had to do it.
I did. You teed me up for that one.
I kind of did. I tried to not. I tried to do the opposite of teeing you up.
100% teed me up. Yeah, always, dude.
Okay, so
and I knew that doing that would do that.
Shooting blanks, you know, semen or bullets is tricky business. I guess we could agree on that. It's tricky business, regardless of what is or is not coming out of the barrel. So.
Yeah, it's coming out the barrel.
Stop. That was it. Let's leave that one alone, please.
Your phrasing is incredible today.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I appreciate that. But,
all right. I think that's a good transition to go into the nuclear option. So this is from the BBC here. Let's see. Trump is pressing the nuclear option on tariffs. So we have Liberation Day coming tomorrow is what Trump's calling it.
You definitely don't want to be shooting blanks when nukes are involved.
What if Liberation Day is a blank that got shot? What if we were throwing rope instead of being liberated?
Throwing rope?
Well, I mean,
no. Let's not get into that. Let's not get into what that means. I understand. I had to think about it. I get where you're going with that. Let's just trudge on forward here.
All right. So every time Donald Trump's mentioned his tariffs, I mean, I don't even need to read the article. We freak the fuck out in America because we don't know what it's going to do with our economy. You know, it could be good, could be bad. It's going to be bad to start with. It could be good in the future. Still lent to be seen. We're already not doing great. So for us to go to bad and with the potential for it to go good, I think freaks the fuck out of most people, and myself included.
Well, Joshua, the tariffs are simply going to be one of the best things, if not the best thing that's ever happened to our economy. It's guaranteed it's going to happen. I promise you.
But is it though?
Is that not? Yeah, is that not convincing? I feel like it's more convincing when it's stated in the
now,
Trump
do you feel
voice.
like you yourself, I mean, because I know you're not fully convinced either, but do you feel like when you say it in the Trump voice, you convince yourself more?
I think it sounds like a lot better of a plan than it does outside of the Trump voice. It just puts the emphasis on the importance of these tariffs, and it makes them sound a lot cooler. A lot cooler. Maybe the coolest.
Yes. So, I mean, it was supposed to go out today, but they didn't want to do it on April 1st because they didn't want everyone to think it was a cruel joke, which still kind of feels like it might be. We don't know.
They said it, too. I love how they actually talked about it.
Dude, of course they did. It's Trump.
We don't want it to be on that day. That day is a little tricky. It's not the best day.
It is a tricky day, isn't it?
Yeah.
April Fools.
Golly.
That's the day of the trick. Well, actually, no, my favorite is trick or treat for tricking people.
It's not really a trick, though, is it? You're just asking
No, I totally
for
saw a
candy.
video the other day of this girl getting mad because her son went to this guy's house and he like took a bunch of Brussels sprouts and wrapped them in Ferrero Rocher wrapping. And this mom was like, "How could you do this?" She was British, by the way. "How could you do this to my son? These are his favorite candies." And she opens one up and she's like, "And it's Brussels sprouts. What is this? How could you do that?" And the dude's like, "Well, it's trick or treat," and he got trick, and he's like, "Yeah, but it's a kid," and he's like, and that doesn't not make it funny.
Well, that to me sounds like a psychopath.
I mean, he definitely spent like at least like 30 minutes wrapping Brussels sprouts in Ferrero Rocher wrappers.
Yeah, and although yes, the nomenclature is trick or treat, which would imply that trick is a viable option in the scenario, I would point to the fact that at no given point, certainly in our lifetimes, has that ever been practiced, at least the trick part of it. 99.9% of the time.
Speak for yourself. We pranked a lot of people when I was growing up, especially if a dude gave us raisins, he got rolled.
That's...
Sorry to my parents for
raisins
stealing your toilet paper.
The raisins are the treat. It's sweet and it's tasty.
As
and
an
it's
adult,
healthy
I
for
agree
you.
with you. But as a kid, if someone gave me raisins, I'd be pissed.
Now that's not a trick. That's just that is someone who is trying to take care of the health of the local children.
It is
in
a
their
drop
community.
in a small. It is a small drop in a large pond. If you're giving me raisins in my bag of hundreds of pieces of candy, and I got one box of raisins, you think I'm gonna eat that raisin box?
It's more than no drop at all. It's more than no drop at all.
I think I'd rather just get no drop. I think I'd rather just be like, no raisins.
I think it's better to give children healthy snacks on Thanksgiving and
Halloween.
trick or treat holiday. Sorry, I don't know why Trump in my head doesn't know what Halloween is, but
He
we're just
knows
gonna
what
roll
Thanksgiving
that.
is.
I
don't
think it's
Trump's
I think
the most grateful person. Or
I think
thankful.
you should give all of the kids raisins and especially celery with peanut butter. I think that's a great option. It's wonderful. It's great. It's very healthy for you. And that's where I stand on it.
So, I mean, back to reciprocal tariffs, supposedly. So that's what Trump's claiming. Recent days, Trump's adamant that tariffs will only be reciprocal. The U.S. will be nicer to its trade partners.
Okay, so the new plan is not to do arbitrary but like tariffs, but to do directly whatever tariffs they have, we put on them.
So it doesn't rule out wild-scale imposition of tariffs at 10 to 20%. For example, the U.S. deems that the value-added taxes are tariffs. It's possible that countries be very broadly bracketed into different levels of a basically universal tariff, as G7 negotiator told me this at the weekend. It all comes down to President Trump. Such system as this, with equivalent global retaliation, would see the UK economy shrinking by 1%, enough to wipe out growth and lead to pressure for tax rises or spending cuts, which I would think they would probably go with. Well, it's the UK, so probably tax rises. But in America, I know right now we would go with the other option. If this was a 1% impact on the American economy. In industry, there's some, I mean, that's just because we're spending $8 fucking trillion a year with a $2 trillion deficit. That's just a mind-boggling amount of fucking money to run our country. $8 trillion with a 300 million population. 320, I think. I mean, there's something bigger here, however, said in his last speech. Rich countries would move up further the value train, while the poor countries made the simpler things. As this has not panned out, especially in the case of China, the U.S. is moving away from this world. If the U.S. overplays its hand in alienating its allies, China will be waiting. The hit to U.S. business in Europe, for example, could be offset by cheaper electronics, clothes, and toys from the East arriving in UK and lowering prices, diverting the U.S. market. So, I mean, like, see, it's funny that they say that because most of the shit they already get like that already comes from China. Same with the U.S.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and China has some of the highest, like, China's tariffs are pretty fucking high, actually.
You mean the ones they have against us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
China. Okay, actually, let's talk about that. China's pretty much a closed economy. So when I say that, they'll sell to us, but they won't buy from us. So what they don't want money leaving their economy going to other countries' economies. They want their money circulating in their economy, and they want other countries to put their money into China's closed economy. So that's why it's almost impossible for, that's why it was such a big deal for TikTok to set up an American company, basically, and become an American company, because it's property of the Chinese government. Basically, any company in China is owned technically by the Chinese government. That's just
interesting.
That's just one of the downsides of being, I guess, downsides for the company, upsides for the government of being communist. When I say upsides, I don't mean that it's good. I'm just saying they have complete control over all of their country's companies and billionaires. So like they can't have an Elon Musk, because an Elon Musk in China would be a dead-on Musk. That was terrible. But he'd be dead as shit. You think in China, if Elon Musk was making some political statements about, powerful figures. Actually, no, because if he was friends with Xi Jinping, he'd be basically untouchable, wouldn't he?
Well, some people would like to think he already is.
But there was that Chinese billionaire I know a couple years ago who was speaking out against the CCP, and he disappeared.
Yeah, well, they definitely don't tolerate any bad talk about their own government, but it seems like
no freedom of speech in China.
Well, and that's so, like, to go to your point earlier about it being a mostly closed economy.
In trouble if I mentioned Tiananmen Square in 1986, or is it 1989?
No, well, let's leave that one. Let's leave that one on the back burner.
YouTube has that in the algorithm where if it just sees that, it's like, nah.
Yes, actually, in fact they do anything. Well, not as it pertains to YouTube in the U.S., but in China, they restrict things like that.
And I don't want to like get too far away, but that's kind of why we're talking about China. Is it's saying basically in this article that if Trump imposes these tariffs, that it's basically going to be China that takes over as the world's supplier of goods and services. But like I was kind of already making the point, China already manufactures basically all the world's electronics, plastic goods. They have basically all the manufacturing set up for your day-to-day life, all the shit you buy.
Well, and that's true, but if Trump's plan or his idea of turning America into primarily a producer instead of an importer, it means doing a lot of things to bring more companies and businesses into the U.S.
To become a producer, though, it takes about 3 to 20 years, depending on the industry.
Yeah.
So
none of these would be short term.
No, and I'm not saying that all plans have to necessarily be short-sighted, but there does, like, especially with kind of what, the point I'm making is like the state of our country is that there needs to be a short-sighted outlook to help with a long-term plan to fix. So right now it seems like we have a long-term plan to fix without a short-term plan to help with those repercussions, and that's what has me scared. Because, these tariffs could balance out in the long term and end up being a net benefit to the country, while end up being an absolute shit show in the short term, right? And that can end up causing a ton of damage. And if you're not suggesting any possible fixes or damage mitigation, then it just scares me that the overall damage could tarnish or just altogether cancel the benefits of us collecting more from other countries instead of our own citizens for our government spending.
Now, I wonder, being that China is virtually it's like a conditional autarky. Do you know what an autarky is?
I don't think I've heard that
It's an economy that is virtually it's all but completely closed off from trade to other nations and stuff. It's just its own closed, like kind of what you said. And to put it simply, it's a closed economy. Like it's only a self-feeding thing. And if they're that's why I say a conditional autarky, because if they're not really when
you say that, so what I was kind of saying is that money flows into China's economy, but money does not flow out of China's economy going to other places.
Yeah, so like I'm saying, like it's almost functionally an autarky in the sense that, like I said, they're not giving any of their value outward, but they're only building value from the outside. I wonder what if we actually did reciprocal tariffs. I wonder how much that would change about their economy. And
well, again, the only thing on reciprocal tariffs that would really hurt them is that we're taxing the goods that they import, which is like most of the shit we buy.
Yeah,
like most of if I go look at most of the things in this room, whether it's this mic that I'm using to talk to you on, whether it's the mic you're using to talk to me on, whether it's most of my computer parts, whether it's my monitor or my speakers, I know that almost all those electronic devices were built in China, right? I'd say probably 90% of the things in this room that are not this house are from China. It's just realistic about it. If it's not furniture, and even if it is furniture, a lot of that furniture, like this desk, is probably built in China. The standing desk.
I bet that shirt you're wearing is from China.
Usually shirts are actually Taiwan. Taiwan's a big shirt.
Well, according to China, that's
Malaysia, Taiwan,
still from
Indonesia.
China.
Oh, Indonesia, my bad. Indonesia loves to make shirts. It just depends. But China is more on electronics, and then like a bunch of the other Southeast or the other South Pacific or Asian countries in that region are typically the ones that are going to deal with the manufacturing of clothes and good stuff like that. But then you'll have China and Taiwan that are, Taiwan being the number one semiconductor, and then China being the number one electronic producer in the world.
So if we start reciprocally tariffing those, and so these are only on goods that we are importing from China,
right? These are so
they don't import from
China
us.
Would tariff. So I mean, you can look at this like, let's see, how much does China import from U.S.?
Because if we're effectively charging them to ship this stuff here, so that would be us drawing the value from their economy out of it, correct? Like taking their money and forcing them to give it to us. What are you looking at there? What are you seeing?
I'm trying. It keeps telling me the U.S. imports to China. China imported 13.7 worth of goods from. Okay, so it is. It's 13.7.
So they do import. So they do in fact import stuff from us. So okay. So yeah. So then that makes more sense. And so we would put a tariff of, I guess, whatever percentage.
Yeah, so there's a $30 billion deficit, $30 billion deficit, or not deficit, but difference in the amount. So we trade $13 billion, we buy $41 billion. So these tariffs would actually, they'll still impact China. They'll still impact our economy. It's going to make those goods we do import from China more expensive. So things like any electronic, you can look for whatever that. So say you have a $10 cable that we get from China for your phone, whatever it is, it's now going to be say it's a 20%, it's going to be a $12 cable. That's how that works. It's just a straight, whatever it is, percentage added cost. So if that product was $10, it's $12. If it's $20, it's $24, right?
Yeah. Well, but that's the thing. If the U.S. buyers start refusing to buy because of the increased price, let's say for example, if the U.S. buyer has a choice between, okay, this is an American cable for $11, right? Just like what it would be anyways being produced in America, versus what was a cheaper Chinese cable, which is now instead of $10, $12, right? on average, they're going to start to prefer the American products due to that lack of price increase. I mean, and then that's going to put more impetus on American manufacturers to produce more. It increases the demand for American goods.
So if that, in a perfect world, I could see that, you know, what the point you're trying to make. But in the world that I have in my head, I see it more as like China is going to end up coming out on top of this, and that it's going to lead to the price increase for the U.S. consumer, because let's say it raises the price from $10 to $12 for China, but American manufacturers right now can only produce that same cable for $20. It's going to take them 5 years to cut their costs down to $15, and then 3 more years to cut it down to $12. And during that whole time, the Chinese cable has a range of $7 that it can increase its price beyond that $12 and still be cheaper than the American cable. So what you end up getting is the competitor can still charge whatever they were charging while you wait for U.S. manufacturing to catch up. And then once they catch up, then you can start looking at having cheaper domestic products and growing the domestic economy. However, you know, the U.S. economy is mostly, it's not, most Americans don't care where their products were built. They care that it works, and they care that it's cheap. It works and it's cheap. I mean, that's most Americans, good enough for most Americans. Some people, you know, there are Americans that will only buy made in America. That's maybe I'd say that's less than 1% of the country. I'd say that less than 1 in 100 people buys only American. It's probably much more than that, like probably 1 in 1,000, but you know, 1 in 100 for this example. And what you're going to end up getting is, like I said, just a net price increase, because it's going to take it's not just going to be overnight. Like, we're not just going to pop up hundreds and hundreds of warehouses and manufacturing facilities overnight, right? So it's just about how fast can we incentivize growth in that industry, in local, you know, in the U.S., and can we offset the price increase from the global tariffs and quickly translate that to cheaper prices domestically? And that'll be the challenge, I think. You know, that's what's going to be the tipping point for me on whether or not this is successful or not, is can we meet those goals of, okay, look, we want to make our economy and our government a tariff-based system, but can we actually and practically meet those goals without destroying what our economy is right now and just leading to all-out mayhem?
Right. Well, and I think that also would vary from industry to industry and product to product. So it is really difficult to say what would definitively happen in each individual sector. But ultimately, the idea of a tariff is to benefit not necessarily the consumer and certainly not the importer, right? But it is meant to benefit the American producer. Right. And although, yes, of course it would take time, I think that it's whether or not that process should be started is one question, but it is an absolute fact that if you wanted it to be that way, it's got to start somewhere. Right. It's got to start somewhere. If you want to achieve that benefit, you got to have to start somewhere. And a part of it is going to be price increase. And we'll see. We'll have to see if the American producer will take the benefit that it's granted from these tariffs and actually do with it what it needs to. I think that it will. I mean, that's the thing. It's, you know, Americans are, you know, they're itching for jobs. They're itching for, you know,
opportunity is definitely one of those things we're looking for right now. But I guess we'll just, like you said, it's a wait and see kind of thing. We get to see tomorrow during Liberation Day. God, why do they have to call it that? It sounds like
is that the official? Like, surely they've not made that they like a federal holiday type of thing, Liberation, or are they just calling it that?
I mean,
new federal holiday, executive order signed yesterday, Liberation Day.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know.
It's just colloquially referred to.
Yeah, let's go to AP. AP probably has a good article on this.
Okay, so it's just a Trump.
Trump has dubbed April 2nd Liberation Day. Anyways, I just think it sounds bad. I don't know. I feel like I'm waiting for an Independence Day spaceship to come and blow up the White House.
Well, I've also been playing a lot of Helldivers too, so that type of
Freedom.
vernacular, this type of Liberation Day, like that sounds pretty epic.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like something that a socialistic society would create.
It sounds cooler out of context than it does in
context. In Helldivers, right? It's set in the Starship Trooper universe, and if you've never seen Starship Troopers,
the Starship Trooper universe.
Well, it is set in that universe.
No, it's not. They're completely different IPs. They have a Starship Trooper video game out.
Okay.
It's inspired by
the same principles.
In part, it's inspired by.
Yeah. Super Earth, I think, exists in both of them, and democracy being the number one thing.
No, it does not exist in both. It's just Earth.
Oh, it's just Earth?
It's just Earth.
Oh, okay. See, it's been a while since I've seen Starship Troopers.
Yeah, they're very totally different universe.
But the main thing being is that it's a very fascistic society.
Not sponsored.
Can I grab? Thank you.
There you go. I got you here. I'll hand it to you.
So, I mean, you know, during Starship Troopers, I mean, it's made very clear that, you know, it's a socialistic society that allows work as low as 7 years old. Every citizen does their part. And that's
you got to serve in the military to become a citizen. It's how it works in Starship Troopers.
Same thing, I think, with Helldivers. You're not a citizen until you served.
No, you can serve in the Helldiver Corps voluntarily.
Well, the Helldivers is their own separate entity of... Either way, yeah, it's a fascistic society where everything is set in the terms of, instead of fascism, it's all for the name of democracy, but, you know... The
managed democracy.
Managed democracy, yeah. It's if you haven't played it, it's a fun one, and if you haven't looked at the lore about it, it's absolutely hilarious.
It's very
in
cool
the worst way possible, but I mean, it's very fun to play. It's just like one of those things where you listen to they literally play like propaganda during the game, so it's like socialistic or fascistic propaganda, and you're just like,
yeah, it's very on the nose, but tastefully so. It's
very clear that it's sarcasm and that it's being done ironically, but that it's you still can get into it, like it's you know.
Yeah, well, they actually, and now that we're sidetracked a little bit, I'll tell you this funny thing. So they got the head of the studio that made that game got interviewed, and they were asked, or they kind of were propositioned with a question of like, if you could, you know, basically brainwash a whole, you know, tens of thousands of people into being like active, like virtual fascists, like to where they would just go along with the narrative and not question it or not go against it. And they're like, yeah, that's pretty much what we've done. So it's kind of, you know, not that the game is an experiment, but it is fun to think about it in that context.
I think that, you know, while we're in the process of going through games and culture, I think we should finally get to our final story.
Special end story. We didn't mention it in the beginning, so hopefully if you stuck around, you're about to witness something glorious.
Just look at this picture, but let's watch this video first.
My name is Chanel Tapper, and I am the Guinness World Record holder for female with the longest tongue. I like little fun, silly, or what have you, things like that. That's what makes my tongue, I feel, the most fun, when I could do things that are...
Can I just say, she's probably very popular in the lesbian community.
Outside the box with it.
Did you see that tongue?
This episode is just rife with your homophobia, I have to say.
How is this homophobia? I said she'd be popular in the lesbian community. I said nothing derogatory about the lesbians.
She is.
I said she would be.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Honestly, the best reaction I could ever get when somebody sees my tongue is screaming. I actually do like when people yell or scream or in shock or horror sometimes, but that's probably my favorite one because it's funny to me, to be honest. It's a dramatic response.
Now, holding stuff
I don't really like to bring up my record because a lot of times it kind of gets some flack and I don't really like the attention. I deal with the attention when I have to and it's totally fine, but just to have it for no reason is not really my thing. My favorite thing about being a record holder has to be when I get to travel and meet other record holders as well. It's fun, and of course, I get to see the parts of the world I've never seen before. The official measurement for my tongue, if I'm not mistaken, is around 3.9 inches.
God.
That's challenging.
So 3.9? No, 3.8. Let's be real here, okay? It matters.
Inches.
This is a record here, okay?
I know men care about the point.
You do probably. I would imagine. But no, so
every
that's
millimeter matters.
Here's the thing, okay? Let's just try to be mature about this, okay?
Trying. Failing.
We saw some very interesting tricks. You could call them tricks. I would call them legitimate functions. I think that her prowess.
Okay, how does holding a spoon in one's tongue help you in any way?
So think about how many times you've been preparing food and sometimes you just need two hands to get something situated. And if you don't want to set your dirty spoon that you've been mixing around, if you don't have a place to put it, you need simply, if you're her, set this spoon down on your absolutely magnificent tongue and hold it there while you continue to prepare your food. And then when you're done, you need simply only remove it from your tongue's grasp. And I think that is utilitarian.
I have one problem that I'm going to ask you to overcome with that.
Let's hear it.
How are you going to solve the drooling issue?
Did you see her drooling during any of these tricks?
No, but if you're holding a spoon in your tongue long enough for you to be doing something else, at some point you're going to start drooling.
Joshua, listen. Your salivary glands, okay, are at the base of your tongue. And stimulation in the area is what would cause them to, salivate, would produce saliva. If the majority of the stimulation is
do you think her tongue's
3
long enough
inches
to stimulate
away,
its own salivation?
What?
Yeah, at 4 inches almost. You think that thing can stimulate itself to salivate? Like she curl it back in there?
God damn it! Let me
off topic. Sorry.
Pardon my French. If the tongue is being stimulated over 3 inches away from the salivary glands,
I'm sorry.
I could imagine that would not stimulate them very much. And as such, if you are only utilizing the longer end of your tongue, I would say salivation might not be such of an issue. That's what I would say.
Her favorite thing is getting to meet other record holders.
I bet those were some tenacious makeout sessions.
I was thinking much more vulgar, but...
Yep, let's try to... I told you we were going to keep it professional for this story, Joshua.
So hard, dude.
I bet it is. One of the coolest things that I saw out of that video was the flip cupping. And for basically the reason that you said, which is that is tricky enough to do with your actual
It looked
appendages.
like she was trying to make out or eat with the Jenga tower, though. That looked funny.
That was, and she effectively was making out with the Jenga tower. But
when it falls over, let's go back. Right, what is it? Right, like this. Oh God, she's just so aggressively getting in there. When she's going boom, look at that. Why is that
challenging? That's
that. Well, listen, you're doing something with your tongue. That's by.
I know, but she's
by
she's
default,
like a dog nudging the shit out of it.
Yeah, well, by default, it's going to be a very intimate and difficult task to accomplish, especially if you're talking about doing a Jenga tower, which once again is hard enough to do with your actual appendages. I mean, to say that she might have to get in there.
All I'm saying is from that video, she looks like she has expert control over that tongue, and that was not demonstrated in that Jenga video, and I was disappointed.
Well, I would say the thing that was most alarming to me was the wagging of the tongue. I think that was the most gratuitous and graphic part of the video.
I found that the hottest.
I'm sure you did, and I'm sure that's exactly why you found it the hottest. But it did elicit images of
hotness,
dog tongue wagging, which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, gives me some concern because you yourself mentioned how much it resembled the wagging of a dog's tongue, and now you're telling me that it is in fact the part that enthralled you the most. And I have to say that
I'm realizing now the mistake of my words.
That gives me some grave concern.
Well, see, a lot of the time, and I just say things
clearly,
and then not realize that I've said things in the past that directly contradict or might go against what I just said. So, sometimes that happens. We're people, we make mistakes.
Yeah, sometimes you accidentally admit on a podcast, which is viewable by the entire world and all of its occupants, that you are turned on by the behaviors of dogs.
No, that's not what I said. No, I just said that her very long tongue was her hottest feature.
Not in so few words, but, I
think we'll leave that to the audience. I also think we've been going for a little over an hour now and kind of reached a good point to maybe come to an end.
I think so. I think it's fine.
Well, everyone, thank you guys so much. Again, a little bit of a change in the name, but thanks for watching Josh and Ferd versus the world, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yes, and if you have any commentary or any ideas for what we should talk about on the next episode, feel free to put them in the comments. And if you would like to argue the efficacy of Josh's tastes, which we've discovered here in this episode, feel free to talk about
any of the subjects that we've talked about, whether it's the Tesla owner, Adolf Hitler, to
yes, any of those, feel free to discuss those in the comments. We'd love to see them.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and thank you guys so much for watching.
Thank you guys, and y'all be easy.